This is the history of the Irish in Kansas City, brought to you by the Irish Roots Cafe, part of our series on the Irish in America from www.irishroots.com.
I thought that I was going to the Wizard of Oz world. I had grown up hiding my Irish heritage. That was such a big deal, and I remember crying just thinking of how they would feel if they could see me do that. And everybody wouldn't talk to you because your name was O'Reilly.
I'm Michael Laughlin, your host. You can reach me with your comments by emailing mike@irishroots.com or by mailing to Box 7575, Kansas City, Missouri, 64116, the old-fashioned way. Phone in your comments to me at 816-256-3360. Please do call in and leave your message. We always look for comments, and you might be able to help us out with a little audio message of your own, letting people know what some of the history in Kansas City is, and for that matter in the Midwest as we expand our episodes. We've gathered together a group of scholars, authors, and everyday Irish to paint you the picture of the history of the Irish in Kansas City. Today we talk with Patsy O'Reilly from Liverpool, England. Episode 10, when Kansas City met Patsy O'Reilly and she decided to stay for a while. Hey, do be sure to check out our webpage. That's where all of our podcasts and resources can be found. We have an Irish Families podcast on genealogy and family history that's been around for a year or so. And keep in mind that I'm always looking for good interviews with the Irish in Missouri, America, or anywhere in the world. And that number again is 816-256-3360. Leave a message of any sort. And find a book, search for your family tree, or even become a member. It all goes to keep things rolling in the right direction. And you can surely get there from here by going to www.irishroots.com. And remember to check the show notes on our blog for this episode while you're on the webpage. Let me see. I think I'll pick a website for the week. It's going to be on St. Patrick's, Missouri. And that's a place where you can have a St. Patrick's Day card postmarked to anybody anywhere in the world and send it to them. They'll be glad to help you out with that. There's a small fee. You can have a designed envelope from the Shrine of St. Patrick there for $1. And that includes the stamp, a special postmark, a St. Patrick's Day greeting card, and a shamrock cachet designed by Francis O'Doonan in 1936. That's a heck of a deal. A special gift for $1. So when St. Patrick's Day rolls around, check that out. And, of course, you can go see St. Patrick's, Missouri any old time. They're the only city in the world that has a post office, and the city's named after St. Patrick. At least nobody's challenged that statistic yet, so we're going to believe it. I'll have that address on our show notes. You can also just type in St. Patrick's, Missouri into your search engine, and that will probably get you there, too. Before we leave, I'll give you their address in case you want to write them. You might jot it down. I'll also have that on the show notes. It's the Shrine of St. Patrick, Box 34, St. Patrick, Missouri, 63466. And, of course, that's in the United States of America. Well, now, let me see. The book of the week. I'm really glad to talk to you this week, folks, before we get to Patsy's interview, which you really don't want to miss. Missouri Irish, the original history, including Kansas City, St. Louis, and Trails West, is on the press. Should be out here in just a couple of weeks. And I'd like to remind you that that was the first book ever written on the history of the Irish in Missouri and in Kansas City. I wrote that way back in 1984 and just updated it a little bit. I haven't been able to include all the other new history that I've learned since then, but I sure have got some illustrations in there and some new pages to help bring us into more modern times, especially through the 80s. That's when I was the most active. And the earliest date I found when looking for the Irish in Missouri was 1770. And that's when I ran into mention of Father Maxwell, I think it was, and his planned settlement for the Boy Brule Bottom. And that was under the French regime. They had sent back and asked for a priest, and they ended up sending him Father Maxwell from Ireland, and he wanted to establish a settlement. I don't really know how well it went. But like I said, I've updated this book from those early days in 1770, and a lot more from the 20th century is included, too. Can you remember back to the 20th century? Some of you can't, I don't think. But I've added some commentary from the times that I remembered the best. That would include the founding of the Irish American Cultural Center back in 1982. I remember that as one of the best events that I got involved with, along with the founding of the first Irish American newspaper in Kansas City by the Hibernians, and that was the Shamrock. And it was rocking for a while, but finally slowed down and disappeared from the scene. And how about the Luck Penny, the only Irish shop in town for a while, I think. In all, this new book, the Missouri Irish Book, is 264 pages with a fine color cover. We've got some great personalities on that cover, don't you know? I think there's a Sheehan and a Brown and Adams and Morris and the Kerry Patch and old Father Hogan and Griffin from the Irish Wilderness Settlement. Who could forget old Phelim O'Toole, the fireman hero from St. Louis? And, of course, there's a little picture of the Murphy wagon on front. And if you never heard of the Murphy wagon, you sure should have, I'm telling you. You better find out. Well, the cost is going to be $29.95 till it hits the streets, but listeners to this podcast can deduct $5 when they order it direct from me. Just say Irish Roots Cafe when you send in your order. It's on the presses now, and it'll be hitting the streets in a couple of weeks, so keep your eye out. I have it on our webpage at irishroots.com already, so you can get it ordered right away if you'd like. Just go to the Books We Publish section, and it will be on the list. Missouri Valley Special Collections down at the old KC Library has already placed an order from what I am told. So if you're broke and all you can do is make a trip to the library, just do that and take a look and see it for yourself. Well, I think it's about time to move on to the interview here. Just one more mention. We're going to be covering St. Louis pretty soon, just as soon as we finish up with the Kansas City Irish in America segment. And I noticed, let me see, there was a different little page, St. Louis Irish Surnames and Their Researchers. That'd be a nice place to go if you're looking for family history in St. Louis area. I'll have that address on our show notes on our blog on the webpage. Now let's listen in to today's interview at the Irish Roots Cafe. We're going to talk with Patsy O'Reilly Pope this week, and I want you to listen in closely. I'm telling you, you have no idea how lucky you are right here in America, folks. Can you imagine being moved to tears because you had the right to march proudly in a parade for the Irish without fear, in utter joy? Well, we can do that here. But back in 1984, Patsy shared some stories with us, and that wasn't so long ago. Many places in the world don't allow that kind of friendly parade that we have here. Stop, listen, and remember along with Patsy today. Patsy, I wonder, you came here a lot of years ago, and the plane landed in Kansas City, Missouri, and you were coming from England. What were your first impressions on the town and what it was like and how it compared to your home?
Well, when I first got off the plane, I was expecting to see the Emerald City. I thought that I was going to the Wizard of Oz world. I had not really heard of Kansas City. It wasn't one of those places that we heard a lot about. Our television shows were showing us New York and, LA, maybe Florida.
Right.
But the interior of America, I really don't think we knew a great deal about it. And really, even today, we don't know that much about it over here. It's just like this area of the country that we think is farming and wheat fields that go on forever, and we don't really think of cities being there.
Right.
So when I first arrived, I was surprised at how big a city it was. And that there was a recognizable downtown with skyscrapers, and there was, areas of it that were very distinctive from one another.
Right.
And also the whole thing of the divide between Missouri and Kansas really threw me.
Yeah,
because I've had no experience of anything like that.
Yeah, it's almost like a divide between two countries, wasn't it, for you?
It was. It really was. And especially, there was, I think there was one road, and I forget what it was called, but we lived not far from it. And literally one side of the road was Kansas and one side was Missouri.
That was
and for me, that was, yes. I just could not get used to that.
It was just an amazing thing. Isn't that something? Yeah, there's been a lot of comments over state line over the years. What about
and especially with the differences between, what one state can do and what the other state and the authority
the laws,
issues.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point. What about the Irish community as far as groups and organizations or opinions compared to home?
Well, number one, I was welcomed with open arms by the Irish community in Kansas City. They were very happy to have me involved, which was wonderful. I had grown up in a very sectarian environment. Liverpool, back in the 60s and 70s, where I was growing up, was very much a sectarian place where Protestant and Catholic were very separate. We lived in different areas and we didn't intermix. We had lots of fighting going on. And unfortunately, I was on the wrong side. As a Catholic, of course, living in England, I wasn't on the side that was politically correct. And so when I got to Kansas City, it was very surprising that the Irish heritage was actually celebrated as openly and as vehemently as it was, because I had grown up hiding my Irish heritage. My grandmother on St. Patrick's Day would make sure that I took my crucifix off in case anybody from the other side saw it and was going to pick on me.
Boy, that's amazing.
You couldn't wear green. You couldn't wear the shamrock.
Boy, and over here it was just the opposite. You're supposed to wear green, and you're proud of it, and everybody celebrates with you. That is.
I mean, I remember crying when I walked in the parade because my grandmother had always wanted to celebrate St. Patrick's Day and had been through so much over here, and the fact that I was just walking in the parade, for my grandparents, that was such a big deal, and I remember crying just thinking of how they would feel if they could see me do that.
Well, and that just gives all the more importance to the parade. A lot of people forget that there's a meaning and a reason behind why 100,000 people will get up and march on a given day. And that's one of the reasons in the background that we may not all remember, but we just know it's supposed to be.
Yes. Yeah, very true. And of course, I had grown up watching the Orange parades, where they had celebrated their heritage. They had marched the streets and had, a lot of celebrations here, and we couldn't. And so for me, it was almost like an achievement that I could be Irish and openly Irish. I'm not ashamed of that.
Well, that's amazing. What year was that you were first here?
I came over in 84. So
that was 1984, and that describes the conditions in Kansas City compared to Liverpool.
Yes. And we're very, I was very surprised that people didn't know. I know they knew what was going on in Northern Ireland, but they didn't understand what was going on in Liverpool and Glasgow, Manchester and Birmingham. There's huge amounts of Irish in those English cities,
right.
And we were a subclass. My name was O'Reilly, and if I sent my application in for a job and they saw my name, it would be put in the bin without even looking at what qualifications I had. We were still being blackballed even in the early 80s.
Well, is it better now?
It is. And unfortunately, I say that because, in a way, it's really sad because the decline of religion has really taken away all of the need for that sectarianism.
Right.
The lack of people going to church, the closure of the churches, the closure of the Catholic schools, the integration of the neighborhoods and moving out into the suburbs. There just isn't the same. There isn't the same conviction about that heritage, and unfortunately, it was all tied to religion. And now the lack of religion has just seen people become far more, homogenized. Really.
Well, that's amazing because I always thought it really wasn't religion; it was class.
Yeah.
And I know that the religion was there in each class, which made it a separate thing. But I thought the underlying cause was class. But you're saying it was religion.
It really was. I mean, from my experience, it was. I mean, I was born and raised in a working class family, but they managed to send me and educate me in an upper middle class way by sending me to a private girls' school. And when I got out of school, I went into nursing and was in the professional ranks. So I kind of moved between different class groups, and in every class group, I found the same religious overtones. At school, there was only 3 Catholics in my class of 34, and we were very much segregated a lot of times by the teachers because we were Catholic. I remember the teachers calling me, an Irish fisherman's wife and a gusser snipe and just horrible things just because.
I wouldn't have thought that would have happened this late in history, but it sure was going on.
It really was, and I think what made it worse was there was a bombing campaign, during the late 60s and 70s. The IRA were targeting the British mainland, and of course you'd read about that in the paper, and then you'd go to work, and everybody wouldn't talk to you because your name was O'Reilly.
My gosh, yeah.
So you were definitely taking the brunt of the political movement. And of course, just by your name, they knew that you were Irish Catholic, and so therefore you were the one they didn't speak to, or there would be a bomb scare, and yours would be the bags that would be searched.
Yeah. It reminds me of the Muslim thing going on right now a little bit.
Very similar. No. Very, very, very similar. And of course, I noticed in America, people didn't identify each other quite as much as they do over here as far as what you look like and your accent and your name. It was immediately obvious to anybody in England whether you were Irish Catholic or Irish Protestant, just by your name and how you look. Right,
that's amazing. Now, moving into modern times and talking about recognizing people like that, what do the average person in Liverpool, what might they think of an American who's over there on holiday? What kind of opinions or thoughts do they have about the American personality?
Well, unfortunately, I think that loud, brash American personality with, the Stetson hat and the camera and the trainer shoes is still there. We watch a lot of American television. Right now, the most popular show on is Grey's Anatomy, ER, those things. So it's very similar to what you're watching in America. So that has helped. That they see a lot through the media. But still, if you talk to them, they tend to think the Americans who are over here automatically have money and are going to have their say and are going to disregard any unwritten rules or status quo. They're going to push the envelope.
That's right, and they almost have a disregard for maybe the mores or the customs of the local area.
Yes, and the nuances as well of British people are extremely politically correct within their class system, and oftentimes Americans have no idea, but it looks to the British person as if they're just steamrolling through.
And to the American, it's just normal life.
Exactly.
Oh, yes. That's an amazing thing. And Americans really aren't aware of it on this side very much. I always say, remember, just be polite and have good manners and everything's fine. You may be on vacation, but, the other people are living their regular everyday lives. So,
yes, exactly.
Well, that's about it for today, folks. The rest of Patsy's interview is on the Irish in America podcast series. I did a few weeks back, put it up there. Came out to be a very interesting talk, but I thought this was of particular interest to Kansas City, so I saved it for the Missouri Irish podcast. It doesn't appear on the other one. Just trying to keep everybody happy. Now, let's just say we've got to go here. I'll mention a few things. We're just going to mention the things people have sent in on activities. There's so much going on. August 31st, of course, to September 2nd is the Kansas City Irish Fest. That's on Labor Day weekend. There's a Gateway Fest at St. Louis, Missouri on August 25. And, of course, August 3rd to 5, the Dublin Irish Festival in Dublin, Ohio. And that's at the DublinIrishFestival.org. We'll be there. Where's this going to be? I think it's our 10th anniversary. They're bringing us out there to exhibit and to consult free for the crowd. So if you're out that way, be sure to stop by and say hi. We might even be recording a podcast or two. Now, the St. Louis Scottish Games are going to be going on October 5 and 6 in 2007. And September 7th and 8th are the Southwest Missouri Celtic Heritage Festival and Highland Games. That's in Buffalo, Missouri. And we still got a note here on some Celtic sounds in Missouri. Monday nights in Springfield, Missouri. Hooligans Irish Celtic Sessions Band at Galloway Station. I hope that's still going on. I didn't check it out, but that's what the email said. Well, this is Mike O'Loughlin at the Irish Roots Cafe. Reach me anytime at irishroots.com, where you can find all of our books and podcasts, including our Irish Families Worldwide podcast. Be sure to check the show notes for each episode on our webpage. Donations and comments are welcome, and a big thank you to all of our members who make this all possible. That's all, folks, until we meet next time right here where Ireland met Kansas City at the Irish Roots Cafe.